we have today. I'm very excited. One of the instructors I really admire. I know him as Taylor Jiu Jitsu, but I'll let Sensei Professor kind of introduce himself. And please, by all means, tell us your story and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, first of all. It's an
Oh,
honor.
pleasure. No,
Uh,
honor's mine. Thank you for making the time.
yeah, so Taylor Jiu-Jitsu, as you can find Instagram. Other name I'm known by is the Dirty Demon Wrist Locker.
Yes, yes, yes.
I've gained quite the following by the looks of it.
Yes, you have. You have. You see me like in your videos and a little bit in Aikido, as you're probably familiar. There's some wrist locks, but they're not. I guess we can dive into that a little bit. They're not emphasized in the same way. I'm sure you're familiar with Aikido, but Aikido, in my experience, is like kind of we have like a professional agreement, right? Where like there's a blending and we're drilling, but we don't have like the rolling and randori sparring aspect to it, right? So it's up to
Right.
you or the practitioner to try to take that further. And some people do and some people don't. But how did you get into the wrist locks? What inspired you and where did you find that information, or was that part of your upbringing in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu?
Well, we did. Well, first of all, the style of jiu-jitsu that we do is Kumo jiu-jitsu,
Okay.
and it's Japanese based. My instructor, when he was doing traditional jiu-jitsu, found out a lot of the grappling side was taken out, so he started to bring it back.
Ah, interesting. That's nice.
Yeah, so I've been doing it for 25 years now,
Wow.
somewhere around there. Martial arts altogether 40 years.
Oh, wow. So you've been
Uh,
on the block at least a couple of times.
yeah, started out in Taekwondo, and
Okay.
I just recently got back into doing Muay Thai,
Nice.
and I've done some stick and knife fighting stuff. So, friends all over, right? You get together and you beat the crap out of each other.
Right. And I appreciate that because and Aikido people, not to discredit anyone, just sharing my experience. I find it, and I've heard this in some other traditional martial arts styles. For me in Aikido, there it feels like it's sort of segmented, right? Because Aikido is kind of a niche martial art. So we'd have, this organization and that organization, and sometimes people would go across and go to seminars, but I feel like it's segmented in that way. But I like what you're doing because it seems like you have a lot of experience, but the idea of cross training seems to be like ingrained in you. That's not something that was frowned upon in your upbringing.
No, both of my instructors, Taekwondo and Jiu-Jitsu, are both like train as with as many people as possible and as many arts as you can.
Right. I think that's beautiful. My first instructor wasn't too into that, but my second instructor was Downman Wade Sensei, who I mentioned in our chat before we got started. So another question for you. It looks like you travel a lot and you're doing a lot of seminars and things, which hopefully I'll be able to attend soon and we can collaborate in person. What keeps you motivated while you're doing these events? What kind of keeps you going and inspires you to get out there and share the knowledge?
I just love it.
Okay.
I love every aspect about martial arts, and then going to seminars, whether it's a big one with multiple instructors or one I'm just teaching myself. I love the energy in the room. I love meeting new people. And you're always going to learn something different. Everybody has a different take on stuff, and just the energy from people. Like I love all that. Even with my students, I just love the energy in the dojo.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
So
appreciate that. Yeah,
that's what keeps me going.
that's inspiring. So let me ask you, I'm bouncing around a little bit. I appreciate your patience. When you started martial arts, and I know you mentioned Taekwondo, wherever you were, whatever the beginning was in your training, did you think you would get to a point, or did you have a dream of becoming a world-renowned famous instructor, or did you not have that ambition at the beginning?
Never thought I'd be where I am today.
Wow,
And I still do it just for the fun of doing it.
that's
Like I
beautiful.
just love doing it.
It shows in your videos. Like I said,
So I never expected to be like this well known, or I wouldn't say like a celebrity status, but just popular. right? So,
Right.
and that keeps me going. Like, I just love every ounce of martial arts, whether it's jujitsu, taekwondo, aikido, karate. Like, I just love it. You know, show me something cool. If I can put it into my style, I absolutely will try.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I love that ambition. I love that putting things together. Um, I wanted to also ask you, um, what are some of the challenges you faced, I guess, coming up in your training? And the reason I'm asking is because I believe some of my audience now, as it's growing, are people who are still up and coming in the ranks. So it'd be nice to hear some of those challenges if you'd like to share and how you've overcome some of those to kind of get where you are today and just give some motivation to the, I guess, the students out there that are kind of admiring your work.
Well, you know, like a lot of people in martial arts, you kind of hit a plateau, and that's where you'll see a lot of people either drop off or not come back, right? You know, you just got to push through it. You'll
Right.
eventually get better. Maybe you have to rearrange how you train a little bit or find some other people to train with. Well, you just got to push through it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And you know, if you're a white belt or in the lower belts, yellow, orange, green, you just have to find what's going to keep you motivated and all the hardships that are with the lower belts, right? Like, I
Right.
suck, keep going. Well, it's not that you suck, you're just learning. So
I got
everything will
that
come
part down
together
since
eventually.
I have the I suck part down pretty well across two martial arts now. I appreciate that. Um, Another question. So we talked about your challenges in training. For someone who's getting older, or for some practitioners who are starting martial arts later in life. So I'm 39 in a couple of weeks. So I'm not that young. I'm not that old, but the landscape. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is kind of a young man's game. What advice do you have for anyone getting into martial arts, starting around my age, or getting a little older? What advice can you give to them to help maintain longevity in their training?
All right. So, you know, if it's like my style of jiu-jitsu or BJJ, you can choose the people you want to roll with and who you don't want to roll with,
Mm,
right? I mean, if that one guy looks like he's pretty strong and may look like he hurt you, just say no. I don't want to roll. A little older. Like, you can choose the people you want to train with,
right,
right? Or you know, you're starting up, maybe you got some injuries, or like, just, hey, go a little slower, or hurt here, you know, or I'm just learning. Can we go light? And most people will be accommodating.
right,
I've never had any issues. Like,
right. Yeah, same.
I'm
Like,
40, I'm 49. The
okay,
way I used to roll, you know, 20s and 30s, it's totally different now.
I bet. But you have all the skills and tools of the trade now, so you can tap into the toolbox and the archive a little bit and school us young bloods, right?
Yeah.
No, but I hear you. That's helpful.
we we got one kid, he's 17.
Okay.
He's a junior arm wrestling champion in
Oh,
here in Ontario, Canada. And like, he's strong.
I
And I
bet.
like, oh, I just want to get on top so I can control the round and finish him.
I hear you. Yeah, so like that's something that's thanks for answering that because the for me it was the size difference. When I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I was like anybody, any size, anytime. And now like I got purple was promoted purple belt about a month ago. Now I'm like, wait a minute, you're like 200 pounds, 230. I'm like 147 with two gis on. I'm like, nah, I'm I be careful roles, but there's some folks that are out there like for blood, and I'm like, I have to be careful. And it's I think I don't know if it's like an ego thing, like I want to get out there, but understanding my limitations. And I like how you put it, where we to maintain that longevity in training, we have to be aware of our body, our limitations. Maybe there's mobility issues, or maybe we need to just accept where we are and just realize we can still grow. And for me, the biggest thing coming to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was I was looking for the competitive aspect, right? Because we didn't
Right.
have that in Aikido. there was, the clashes at seminars where some folks would kind of resist you a little bit to kind of steer your technique, or maybe a little bit of ego to kind of show you their rank and they're powerful, but there's no competition. I didn't play competitive sports coming up, so it was nice to move into that environment later in life. And I found that that was helpful for me to transition to that space and start over without rank, like no responsibility. I wasn't teaching, I just clean slate. So that was helpful.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
yeah.
I still roll some of the big guys, but I'm a little choosy. Good.
I
If
see.
you're a big guy with a white belt, I'll probably roll you. But if you're just like constantly crushing and trying to kill me, chances are I'm gonna be like, look, we just roll. But on the other side of that too, roll with the big guys.
Right.
Let them put you inside control, because it's only going to make your technique to get out better.
Right.
Or you have to solve that problem. Like, I got this guy on me. How the hell do I get out of here?
Right. No, I appreciate that. I want to tap into that a little bit. This is for, the up and coming folks. How do you go about maintaining your practice so that you can grow? Because, and I'll give you a little more context. I often find that there's places where I want to go. So there's submissions and things that I like that I'm comfortable with. They're high percentage for me. And then there's the gaps where I know I need to address them. And I challenge between going towards the stuff I like versus the stuff I need to be doing. Like, is there any advice?
Right.
You know what I mean? Have you experienced that? And what advice can you give
Oh,
who's trying to work through that sort of process this early on?
absolutely. So when I first started out grappling, right? Uh, fighting some of the big guys, I just kept being on my back. So I'm like, I'm just going to learn to fight from guard first
Mm,
and try to figure out everything I can from here. So I just started from guard first.
right.
And then, I used to just let people take my back so I could just work on getting out and defending my back. And then I eventually worked, okay, I'm just going to go work side control or scarf,
Right.
work my top game, mount. So I just transitioned through all of them. Even today I'm still not the best at all of them, but better than I was.
Sure, make it look easy, boss. You certainly do. I'm like, I want to do that. With the lapel things, and like I'm starting to play around with wrist locks. So when I found your stuff, because the funny part is I had your page saved. I think I'd messaged you before, and then I started looking at wrist locks again because I'm starting to catch people with them. Like I'm getting a little bit of confidence. And I was like, let me list up wrist locks. And I saw you in I can't remember who your video, if it was Jiu Jitsu. You did a video with someone, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And I was like, I was like, wait a minute. I know that guy. I've already interacted with you. And that's kind of what prompted this request to get you on. Because I was like, wait a minute, why don't you just talk to him and get some feedback and information? So it's nice to actually interact with you here. Thank you.
So when I was just grappling one day, and this is just like a couple years ago, grappling with one of my friends, and I hit a wrist lock, and then it just like sprouted from there. I
Nice.
just like practicing the odd one here and there, and then it just like boom on, like I am finding them from everywhere now.
Wow.
Some of them might be a one-off where I'm like, I only caught that person once, but I still caught them.
Right.
And some of it was just like, well, wonder if this will work.
So before I forget about this, in my gym, where I train at Mainline United, apparently there was this thing I found out on Halloween because we had like a costume roll. So my costume was an Aikido master. So I wore a haki. This is great. But apparently there's this thing with wrist locks. And if you wrist lock some two people, you become the chairman. I think it's like the mat chairman, and they give you this hat. It looks like one of
Nope.
those like ZZ Top hats. So I'm like
That's
having a
awesome.
ball, just like torturing my buddies, right? And head coach Steve comes out and he's like, "Oh, he's like, Soul, that's your second wrist lock." He's like, "You're now the chairman of the mat." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "You gotta wear the hat." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "This is great." That's when I started looking for you. I was like, "Wait a minute, I need to shore this up a little bit." I have a long way to go, but I thought I'd share that with you because that was funny for me.
So then I have a really good friend who does Aki Jiu-Jitsu.
Nice.
And so we get together and we'd spar, and then, I'd do a wrist lock and I would send it to him. He goes, yep. He goes, I'll show you a couple little tweaks. So
Mm.
he was a big part in helping my wrist lock game. And I'd see some of the ones he would do standing up, like Nikio or
Yes.
Sankyo.
Yeah.
And my favorite one that I love doing is called Kota Gadeki,
Okay.
wrist pulverizer.
That's that sounds
I'm
awful,
like,
but I'm intrigued.
I go, yeah. I go, think we can do that on the ground? He's like, absolutely. So we just started playing around and find that. So now when I go to the dojo or anybody's dojo, I just see where I can get a wrist lock from. If it'll get me out of a bad position, and I may not necessarily get it, but if it gets me out of a bad position and I can get somewhere else, well, hey, it worked in my books.
That's interesting that you mentioned that. That was my next question, the level of percentage and if you're getting submissions off it or just someone to move. Because where I am, it's very early on. I found like Sankyo or Nikio. Because I discovered that from, and you know this better than I do, from like say you're doing like a neon belly and you get the position where someone's reaching up where you do like a straight arm lock. I'm starting to find Nikio from there. And I don't
Absolutely.
always get to finish it, but like I see that like they're reacting. And some of these are high level people that are like, respecting where my game is, and I get a little input. And there's a lot of knowledge exchange going on now, thinking about that process because I'm hunting for these things.
Right. Like all my guys know that I'm going for a wrist lock. They know it. They don't like to touch me because they're like, everything's just bad. But yeah, like you said, from Neon Belly, if they're reaching up, yeah, I'm gonna try Nikio. Or if I can bend your arm, I'm gonna try Sankyo or something else I can think of.
Right.
Uh,
Nice.
and even when I go to some of my friends that do BJJ, some of their clubs, or they come visit me, they know, and I'm eventually going to get one. I probably hit a wrist lock probably 90% of the time.
That's great. You're making a lot of enemies, but in making a lot of friends. Like, what's the tally? Do you have a Libra scale that you can weigh your friends versus enemies now, or just folks
I
that
get
glance off
I,
you?
I get called lots of names.
I love it. We need to. Maybe you need to brand those. I'll help you make some T-shirts. We'll make a thing out of it.
Yeah.
Another question for you. I noticed, and this is only from the little bit I've seen of your videos, and I'm really inspired by it. Do you spend any time in no gi at all? Because I don't know if I recall if I've seen you doing any no gi. Are you operating in that space as well, or are you primary just in the gi?
I'm primary just gi, but I do no gi.
Awesome.
And I've had a few people ask do some in no gi, so I will start doing that. Especially now that the warmer weather's coming.
Okay.
Usually in my dojo from like June to September, it's no gi for the summer.
Oh wow, we do 1 month. I think they call it there's Footlocktober and then there's no gi November. That whole month, all classes. I think we have two no-gi classes, and I can't always make them. But sometimes when I compete, I do better in no-gi than gi, and I spend 99% of my time in the gi. Like it translates over, but I think most people
Yeah.
see this, and I'd like to get your input. There's no handles, right? So I can do all the
Right.
sweaty things. Folks are sweaty. Like, how do you feel in gi versus no gi? Do you feel like things directly translate and I mean, obviously with all your experience, but how does that feel for you?
I feel that the wrist locks are a little easier in gi
Right.
because I can wipe the sweat off a little bit than no gi. They're a little slipperier and a little easier to get out, but they can transition. There's a few that can transition
Right.
pretty well.
Okay.
But I'm a traditionalist. I like the gi, so
Do same. And I think it's cool because in Aikido you primarily wear a white gi. When I started Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, like my first few gis were white, and then as soon as I went like die hard, I was like, no, I gotta start getting some different colors, like with black, blue, like nothing crazy. I'm not doing like purple, and I have one like kind of gray camouflage thing that's just a fun gi, but I'm mainly like black, blue, or maybe gray, like traditional colors. But I do like that I can wear something besides the traditional style, but I respect maintaining that like uniformity across things. I know some gyms for promotions they'll wear like a specific color, So I thought, I know a gym or a lot of gyms wear like white. So on promotion day, I wasn't sure I was getting promoted, but I wore a white gi just to keep that sort of
Yep.
tradition. Yeah.
So what the way it works with us is you wear a white gi until you get your blue belt. Blue belt, you can wear a white gi or blue.
Oh, wow.
And when you get the black, I don't care what color you wear.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
I have 70 gis.
all the brands love you. How many brand ambassador campaigns have you been? That's great.
Yeah, everybody goes like, "You got a brand that you're like the most?" I go, "No, pretty much like them all.
All
I'm
right.
just I just like gis."
I love it. Another question for you, and this one might take a while, and I'd love to hear this. So, when I was coming up, and you may have experienced this too, there was this correlation between, or maybe, and it may be a gray area between martial arts and self defense. For me, it was martial arts equals self defense, right? And there's going to be some Aikido people that go, well, it is. But in your experience, as things progress and where you are in your training now, how does that translate to you? What's your interpretation of that?
Well, I was brought up pretty much the same way. To me, martial arts equals self-defense.
Right.
Uh, but as you get more into it, you can see that some martial arts are just that. They're just an art. Maybe not so good for the self-defense part, right? I look at self-defense now is you have to be a little meaner
Mm,
because the way I was taught by my Taekwondo instructor and my Jiu-Jitsu instructor. My Jiu-Jitsu instructor used to be a police officer. Was
oh,
you're going home at the end of the day. So it was I was taught to be, you know what, you do what you have to do to get out and get away.
right.
But like you get the best defense, run away if you can, but if you can't, you're the one going home.
I appreciate that.
They're going to the hospital.
Yeah, I want to dig into that a little deeper if that's okay. So,
Yep.
and again, listeners, like not to discredit anyone. I know this is on the internet, and you've seen a lot of this probably. Like, I know there's the internet shaming for this is fake or hashtag fight street fight, and sometimes people do it to get views. But for people who may not understand like what they're presenting, if they have a business teaching said martial art, I'll use Aikido because I'm in that space. I notice, and I have some friends who do this. They'll say, "Oh, this is what I do in a street fight. I've been in bar fights." Do you have any advice for people just to kind of explain the landscape and what you've experienced, just to kind of give them some context? Because I think there's a disconnect because what people think they're offering and what the rest of the world may see when they view these videos and demonstrations we're offering really when we're online, at least in the Aikido space.
Right. Well, biggest one, like in a fight, I really don't want to go to the ground if I don't have to.
Mm, true.
Right. Because one, I don't know if that person's got friends.
There's that.
Two, I've grappled some of my friends on concrete and glass and sand. Not fun.
The backyard brawls.
Yeah.
The equivalent of like hold my beer. I got the. I hear you.
So I'll try to do what I can to keep it standing and get out. Whether that's throwing punches, knees, elbows, you know, joint locking, in stand up, it's good, but it's difficult,
Mm,
right? The guy's not just going to let you turn his wrist,
there's that.
right? Like, and that's why when I, not shaming Aikido or some other arts where you see them doing all the flippy stuff, looks cool. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Aikido too.
Right.
Uh, but as my Aki Jiu-Jitsu friend, he goes, if you grab a hold of me or punch me, he goes, it's not that I'm trying to lock you up right away. He goes, I'm hitting you back first
There's
a
that.
couple times, and then I'm going to apply my lock if I can,
Right.
depending if you're not already laying on the ground after I punched you in the head.
I hear that. My first instructor, Henry Smith Sensei, he wasn't very well known. I mean, he was a brawler. I remember asking him, I was just like 14 when I first started. And this is around the time I got into Aikido because I was like finding bullies, were kind of discovering me and trying to pick on me a little bit. So I asked him about this. I said, well, Sensei, Smith Sensei, what do I do if my technique fails? He's like, if your Aikido fails, you just mess him up. You just do what you can, inflict the damage, use all your stuff, and get away if you can. But chances are, with what you're learning, you'll have the confidence and you'll be able to escape. And they'll just think you're crazy and they'll leave you alone. Like that was kind of like the thing. I mean, it helped. I mean, I learned more than I thought I would from that space, but I also realized after all these years, my experience is a little different than some other Aikido practitioners, right? Who have maybe a more traditional path. Mine was all over the place. Um,
Right.
yeah, so that I always had that understanding of like, well, you're learning some things, but this is not the all, you know, one click hack to like get out of bullies and stop a violence and save the landlady's purse and things like that, right? Like just people are scary out there.
Yeah. Well, I'm not opposed to poking you in the eyes, kicking you in the nuts if I have to. I'm going to do what I have to do.
Love
Uh, I mean, you made the mistake of coming at me first, so I'll make you pay the price.
it.
And I'm not trying to sound like a tough guy, just
No, it's
that's
reality.
that's the way I was brought up. Yeah, it's reality. If I can run away, I'm going to run away. Because, if I was 20 again, I'd be like, let's go.
Right.
Almost 50 now. Getting punched in the face tends to hurt a little more these days.
I love it. I love it. Uh, Let me ask you this. Competitions. I assume could you explain a little bit about your competitions? Obviously, I've assumed you've done them. Are you still competing in any spaces, in any of the martial arts that you're teaching and participating in?
I've done a few competitions. I'm not competing anymore. Uh, One, I have another full-time job too, so I can't train for competitions as
I hear you on
good as I'd like to.
that. I hear you on that.
Yeah. If I have a handful of times, it's fun. And I think everybody should compete at least once
For
just to
that
try.
experience, right?
Yeah. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. I don't think you have to compete to be a good martial artist. I roll my guys every day. I've gone to other people's gyms to roll. So in one sense, to me, that's a little bit of a competition. No ego, you're just going for fun, but
Right.
you're going to improve yourself there too. So do you necessarily have to compete to be a great martial artist? I don't think so.
Mm.
Does it help? Absolutely.
Mm.
Right? Like look at Gordon Ryan,
The
best
king, you
grappler in
gotta
the
say
world right now, right?
exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of them. Theon Davis, Mike Musumeci. I mean, the list goes on. I can name a lot of those folks that are, I mean, inspired me like yourself. But yeah, I see it. I started competing at white belt and I loved it. But again, I went to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for that. I was like, I want to compete. Like, I want to know what this is like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I
Yep.
had so much. This is funny, but like not funny. Like so much energy I had to get out, and maybe frustration from like the years of Aikido being like sort of passive aggressively bullied. I was like, I'm gonna go to Jiu-Jitsu and let all this stuff out. And like I did. I feel great now. But it was nice to be in a different space. I'm appreciating this so far, and I'm sure my early on podcast subscribers are going to appreciate this too. Um, I'm thinking about other aspects of training that I'd like to talk about, and maybe when did you start teaching is a big question. Like,
All right.
when did that begin in your career?
Taekwondo, I started teaching, I think around 92,
Wow,
somewhere around there.
nice.
And then jujitsu, more or less, I think when I got my green and blue belt
Okay,
there, and I was my instructor's uki
okay,
all the time.
That helped.
Yeah, because just because I came from a martial arts background too, and I knew how to break fall already.
That
Uh,
wonders, doesn't it?
yeah, so he used me a lot, and even now he moved out to the East Coast, Nova Scotia.
Okay.
But even to this day, when he either comes back to Ontario to visit or I go down there, I'm the one he's going to pick on.
That's great, isn't it? There's more to being the guy in the room, right? It's not just sitting at the big kids table.
You know what? I would encourage anybody too to be uki because you're going to learn a lot just being the uki and getting tossed around. And
Right,
I think that's where I picked up a lot of my stuff and how to teach. And
right.
because I think when you're uki, uh, there's details that maybe the students aren't seeing, but you're feeling it, and you're like, oh, that's what's making that work a little bit better.
Right.
So encourage people to be uki. It's fun.
It is. It is. Well, it's interesting. So I'm bouncing back and forth to Aikido just because that's kind of like where I started. The Ukemi thing. So, I mean, Don Enwait was known for Ukemi, my last Aikido instructor who passed. I don't see like he was like a pioneer in the Ukemi space. Him and Bruce Bookman, another instructor who were big on that. But I've noticed it's hard to find like Ukemi. Like you can look at judo, you can look at Aikido, sort of, but like if you want to find it for like common people, because there's a little bit in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like to do front rolls, back rolls, side break falls, and then the rest is kind of like good luck, and no one likes standing work because they don't want to. Have you found that's the same thing? Is there like a place to look for the Ukemi? Because that's a space I'd like to jump into, you know, as I get further in experience in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world. Have you found anything in that space or any resources you could point us to for helping with that
I,
sort of thing?
I think if you want to get really good at break falls, judo.
Yes. Yeah, that's the place to look.
Judo or even Aki Jiu-Jitsu. Any place where they're doing a lot of throwing.
Right. With I guess with that intention, because I have some friends who do judo. My one of the head coach, Steve, did judo for some time. I'm not sure what his rank is in judo, but we do standing work, and he doesn't volunteer that when he teaches. Like he doesn't tell people ahead of time because folks won't show. It's a joke that folks won't show up if you do standing. Like we're starting standing, folks don't want to do it. But yeah, he does, and it's great. And when I'm on the other end of that, like I'm both happy, but at the same time, I'm like, uh-oh. But I do find that that translates over. But going into that, I found that there's some things that translate over from Aikido to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It seems like you found, I want to say, the formula, or you found a way to kind of take your experience from other martial arts and add it into your game now. I know we talked about it a little bit, but is there anything specific you want to share, or any tips for anyone who's trying to build their game and do something with cross training?
I just think if you're doing BJJ or grappling, whatever, if you come from Aikido or Aki Jiu-Jitsu or Judo, find a way to incorporate it into the grappling part. I mean, it's not all going to work, but you can find some similarities for sure and
Right.
incorporate the stuff.
That's beautiful.
That's pretty much all I did. Like, so our style of Japanese jiu-jitsu, as far as I know and what I've seen, is the only style that practices 95% of the grappling.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, I recall you saying that in one of the last videos I saw you doing. You mentioned you explained your background a little bit. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but like, don't get me wrong, I have all kinds of friends that train BJJ, so I get to roll with them, and I just take whatever they show me, and I try to implement it in their eye style. And one of my friends, he who trains BJJ, he took stuff away from us and put it into his grappling game. So it is back and forth, right? Like,
Nice.
uh, I like I said, I love it all. I'll take what I can uh, from it. One of my friends who's a BJJ black belt, rolled to him lots of times. He gave me a purple belt in BJJ.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Now, am I going to go any further? I don't know. I'm busy, so to always
Right.
go to find one of my friends high enough ranked, uh, I don't know. So
Right.
we'll see what happens. But I'm just having a blast doing what I'm doing.
I love that, and I think I love that you're sharing this message, especially with cross training, because there's people in my Aikido page, one of the ones you follow, that I get a few questions about the cross training thing. It comes up, and it's like so taboo. Like there's this whole stigma around like for some people in Aikido, like doing another martial art, like oh you don't defy your sensei, it's one style, and I don't know what you've experienced with that, or if people brought that up to you, but I feel like there's a brand. Instructors want to keep their brand and they want to keep their representatives of that brand, their students, right? So they don't want them to go fly away and do something else because they're selling this style of Aikido. They want to keep that tradition going, right? Have you experienced that at all? Have you given any insight on that sort of thing? Or have you crossed paths with folks experiencing that?
I've crossed, funny enough, an Aikido guy.
True. True.
He was definitely Aikido's the end all that could be all,
Right, right.
and no other art worked. And I was like,
Mm,
you're so wrong though.
right.
Uh, but couldn't really convince him. But that's his mindset.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, there's something for everyone.
Oh, and you see it, I mean, it's sad. It still happened to this day.
There's that.
Like there's karate people that there's karate guys that are like, nope, it's karate. Karate's the best thing. Taekwondo. Nope, that's the best thing.
Right. I
As
understand.
far as I'm concerned, I think you should train in a little bit of everything,
It's both
uh,
good.
and be a little more well-rounded.
And I want to tap into that a little bit if you don't mind. So my interpretation, and then you have much more experience than me, so I'm looking for your input here. Mixed martial arts, from what I've seen and read and heard and just experiences, like the idea of just being well-rounded, right? Like not just, oh, there's just one thing and you use wrestling and this and that. Like it feels like there's just so many pieces of input, but just to like handle all the bases. Can you give your interpretation of what that is? Because it sounds like you're embodying that at a very high level at this point.
Well, I kind of look at it as you know, uh, a jack of all trades, a king of nothing,
I love that.
right? I have some striking background, so I can strike. If you're better at me than striking, then I'm gonna take it to the grappling side of things. If you're better at me than grappling, then I'm gonna try to keep it the striking side of things.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong, there's definitely people that are fantastic in both areas,
It's true.
right? So you play those odds if you ever get into a fight. But
Yeah.
you have some knowledge that is going to help.
Right.
So you're going to be better off than just a pure grappler or just a pure striker,
Right.
right? So, you know, I have some stick and knife fighting training. I am not definitely the best out of it. I've had very minimal amount. I have some basics, but it could help me out in another situation. Right? Somebody's asked me before, why do you want to learn how to use a knife? I said, because I know how to defend myself against that weapon.
Right, right. It's helpful.
Like you learn how the blade works, you're like, oh, that's a scary, scary weapon.
Indeed. Yeah, that's I I don't want to discredit anyone and I get it, but like there's like cringe-worthy things on the internet.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm not trying to put anyone down, folks who are watching, but just like I think it goes back to what we discussed about being clear on our message. You know, we all want to show something. Maybe we want to be popular. We want to show what we're working on. We're demonstrating. But I just think like there's a dangerous side to offering like a one-all catch-all self-defense system, not understanding what could happen to my students or my audience, right?
Right.
Because there's this thing, and you're probably familiar with this too, like the dojo storming thing. I was exposed to early along, and I thought that came from karate. I knew it was big in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Did you experience that, the dojo storming age? Were you
Not
around for that? Was that a thing? I feel like that might
I
be something
was, but
karate, right?
I didn't really experience a whole lot. Anybody that ever came in or any place I went to were all very nice.
Right. So okay, so you didn't meet any people trying to be overly disruptive, I guess. Is that
No, not really. I mean, I might have had a couple, but for the most part, everybody that I've uh, has come either into my dojo or I've gone to theirs, more than welcoming both ways.
that's amazing. Same experience I've had. And I wondered about that when I was teaching early on. Like if like some random dude would just come in and be like, "You suck," and just like pick me up and like ruin my Aikido class. I'm like 19, looking at the door, like, let's turn this way. I just it was like a big nightmare. Like some like wrestler dude would come in and be like, "You're fake." But thankfully, it never happened. I always got respect, and I always try to be honest about what I was offering. Right. I've always been careful. If I ever use the term self defense, I would try to, and this is probably on the Aikido website too, say concepts of self defense, or like we'll explore components of. But like my message to students, a disclaimer in class, isn't like you do this wrist lock. Number one, you're going to break and fall down, and then you get away, and the cops will come and commend you and give you a medal. Like I'm like, no, not me, not this. Like I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't want to get hurt. Like I got to get home. I'm not. I'm worried about me. I don't know about you. So yeah, try to be
Right.
careful in that space, and maybe that's just a
Here's
insecurity of mine from childhood, I guess.
here's my other thing on self-defense. I find that some people, I don't know if teach it wrong is the right thing to say, right? For like people that have been around all the time, because even throwing a punch, there's a whole art on how to throw a punch on itself, right? So you're teaching either women's self-defense or self-defense just class, and you're teaching somebody how to punch. To get them to punch right and proper, that takes years of training to do, right? Oh, you're supposed to hit with these two knuckles. Well, they're not going to remember all that. Or, flare your elbow out. Don't flare your elbow. They're not going to remember that. How to throw a hook, how to throw uppercuts.
Right.
It's just, I try to teach very basic. Use the palm of your heel, hit them in the nose, like run away.
Right. All things I'm familiar with.
Right. And I don't teach, if I'm teaching women's self-defense, I don't teach, well, here, you're going to reach over, grab the arm, twist it up, bow, for like a Nikio or whatever. I'm like, no, this is how you try to get rid of their hand and then run the other way. Because, for you or I to do that, it's in our muscle memory,
That's true.
right?
Some road time behind that.
People coming in just to learn a self-defense course don't have that muscle memory. So teach them, palm strikes or eye gouge or kick to the groin and run away. Right. So one of our kickboxing coach, who's also a Jeet Kune Do guy
Wow.
and brown belt under me, he's teaching a women's self-defense. He's taught a couple self-defense women's course, but it was more of awareness.
Okay. Right.
Like, look around, where can you go, that type of stuff. Right. So, I just find a lot of people try to show like, yeah, do this, this, and this, and then you can get away. Well, I'm sorry, you're going to get that person hurt.
Yeah. There's that. So my coach is I'm actually part of this. I'm basically the crash test dummy. I put on the big suit. So there's I'll send you some pictures of that. You'll get a kick out of it. So there's a women's self-defense workshop. One of the brown belts is a woman who's been doing it a long time. She's great. And then the two instructors, two owners of the gym, offer that workshop, and they brought me in. It's a great experience. But the same message is applied. Like it's not you do this one thing, you get away. It's inflict as much damage as possible. Be loud. Try not to get in these positions. Be aware of your
Right.
surroundings. Be careful. Like it's all like the best you can do to survive and escape. It's not like hunker down, elbows in, and then just crush them. It's like learn these things you'll have to use these things, hopefully never. But these are concepts that will help you in these situations. But like I can't imagine like someone not being in a competitive setting or a setting where they've had that sort of like chaotic uh, environment, right? Because when we do competitions or we spar, like it's a controlled environment. Like you know, you do Muay Thai. I've done a little bit. Like you might get knocked out, but like you're sort of safe because you know your training partners, right?
Right.
Hopefully, in jujitsu, like in a match, you can get your arm torn up or somebody rips a submission or something, right? Which is bad, but the stakes are different. It's not like imminent death, you know, like the
Right.
real
Yeah.
world where someone could just, you know, the worst things could happen. Lord forbid. So like, yeah, it's just it's interesting seeing those things and hearing that interpretation. So that makes me feel a lot better about diving deeper into training because I'm like I wondered what professionals like yourself would think of that, and I appreciate that input.
Like my jiu-jitsu instructor always said, he's like, just trust your spidey sense. If you're walking down the street and a person walking towards you and you have a bad feeling, cross the street.
I hear that. Um, we talked about kind of longevity and training, but there's another piece I want to ask you about strength training. Do you do any strength training? Are there any things you recommend, or is there anything that you've gone through that you'd like to share in terms of that, like throughout your career so far in martial arts?
Uh, Absolutely. Like I'm not one for lifting weights, but I do a lot of push-ups and sit-ups,
Nice,
body weight exercises. I have
beautiful.
a matted area in my basement, so I do a lot of that here. But hey, if you're in the weightlifting, it's only going to benefit.
Right,
If you're in the other strength training, like just body weight exercises or kettlebells, uh, hey, it's only going to benefit your longevity and your martial arts training. So
that's awesome.
do do uh, do it. Absolutely do it.
That's
No, I'm not big on the. I eat as healthy as possible,
there
but I do like my cookies.
you go. There you go. We'll have to send you something for this podcast beyond a hoodie. But we'll talk after. We'll have to send you something and catch up and connect. Yeah, I appreciate that because I find like I try to strength train. Like I'm not lifting very heavy. I'm not a very big guy, but like I find one of my buddies and I call it health and maintenance or something.
Yeah,
Strength training just to keep like the joints, you know, a little more held together. So I have like a bunch of routines I go through, but I'm always looking for something else and stretching because there's this whole thing, and you've heard this and experienced this. BJJ purple belts like never do the warm ups.
yeah.
So the day I'll send you this video. The day I was promoted the purple belt, I said to my coach, I was like, so I can quit now, right? And they're like, you can never quit. So then later on, he's like, oh, you can skip the warm-ups though. And I'm like, okay, that's a joke. Because he knows I won't do it. Like I'm literally the first one in the gym, ready to train, thereafter helping clean and things like you know, just doing the whole super student thing, being a part of the space. Oh man. Are there any instructors or inspirations you got from like anywhere in your training, like from movies or like everybody like Bruce Lee? Was there someone in particular, like a judoka or someone in martial arts that you kind of look back at, like old school traditional martial arts or something? Is there anything
There's
that inspired you in any of that space?
there's all kinds.
I love that.
Like I know uh, everybody's like Bruce Lee, and
Yeah,
he was a big influence. But I grew up more Chuck Norris.
speaking to the choir here, sir.
Yeah. So like Chuck Norris, and then when Best of the Best came out, I'm like, oh, that's the greatest movie ever.
That was great. That was great.
So Philip Ree and Simon Ree, like
Hmm.
those two, and they're still active today. I've watched videos of them still training. And I'm like, I'm just amazed. Uh, you look at Keanu Reeves training for John Wick.
I know.
Like, talk about inspiration. Like, look at that guy go.
Yeah, that's insane. I'm trying to think of who was on my list most recently. Oh, I remember because it's good to see like movie guys like John Claude Van Damme like still out there, Michael Jai White like
Yeah,
still
absolutely.
like 50, 60 years old doing the splits, jump kicking. I mean, I assume some of their stuntmen do things, but a lot of it's them. Like it's one of
Yeah,
the things Expendables 2, seeing Jean-Claude Van Damme get out there. I'm like, what? Like we haven't seen him in ages. And here he goes, like doing the same like super split kick and everything. That was awesome.
I have tons of people that still inspire me. Like even watching my friend Mark Medeiros, who's our kickboxing coach, GKD guy,
Nice.
and I love that guy. He's still training. He's not competing anymore either, but he's still training. He's got guys competing in Muay Thai. He does jujitsu. I started back up doing his Muay Thai class. So like the teacher has become the student type of thing.
I hear you.
Uh, you know, guys like that inspire me. My friend Ryan Bodrug still inspire me. I just take from everybody,
I love
right?
that.
My students inspire me. My brown belts inspire me. And, you know, there's guys like Jean-Jacques Machado, Chris Howder, Josh Barnett. I love it all. And I see them do something cool. I'm like, that's awesome. This is why we keep going.
Keep going. That's the. I mean, I guess that's the message I'm getting from you, and I can't tell you how much energy I'm getting from this. And I hope this carries on because your passion for martial arts and just how you speak about it, the way you articulate your ideas, it's phenomenal. So I really appreciate this. Um, I guess before we wrap up, a couple things. One, how do people find you? Obviously, I know about Taylor Jiu Jitsu's page. Do you want to just kind of spam out there your socials so we can, when we share the video, folks know how to get into to see your work and what you've been up to?
Yeah. So there's two Instagram pages. One is Taylor Jiu-Jitsu and the other one's Dirty Demon Wrist Locker.
Live on
Uh,
that at your own risk.
and Facebook is Taylor Jiu-Jitsu.
Awesome. And
Because I don't have Twitter or X or whatever the heck it's called
neither
these
do
days.
I. I understand. Um, awesome. Well, Sensei, thank you. We'll obviously spend some time connecting after. It's been a pleasure. I mean, obviously a big honor to be here and you're a big inspiration. And hopefully we can meet on the mat soon. And I mean that as a student way. I don't want to get on the wrong side of one of your wrist locks. But
Well,
folks,
I'm working on my passport. I got to get my passport so I can come down south and
okay,
connect with some people. I have friends in the States, a
awesome.
good friend in Ann Arbor and stuff. So I got to get my passport in gear here so I can come visit.
All right. Well, we'll connect and there's nothing wrong with I mean, we haven't been up there, so maybe we'll pop in and see you.
Absolutely, always more than welcome.
My pleasure. All right, folks. Thanks for tapping in. You know how to
Thanks again for having me. Very honored.
Thank you, Sensei. And we'll connect soon. Take care.